Good morning. I'm Jerry Agar. There is a divisive political fight going on in this city, and it's a fight that did not have to happen. This time last year, had we walked out onto the street and just asked random people what they thought of the name of Young Dundas Square, we would have had to have spent a lot of time before we found somebody who had an opinion beyond, why are you asking me that? Is there a problem? It would be an almost vanishingly small percentage of the people who would have had any idea what the history of Dundas is, and among those people, there's a huge disagreement. But a few race-based activists got it in their head that they would adopt the view of history that says that Dundas was a slavery supporter and that black people in Toronto were somehow being kept down by the name of the street and the square. As Amanda Galbraith said this morning,
I just think this is a solution in search of a problem. I think the people in this city want our garbage picked up, want our roads to run properly. I just honestly, I never want to talk about this again. Yeah. If I could possibly avoid it, I think that would be great. I hope this is the last vote we ever hear of it. And if it needs to be quietly removed, fine. But like the city needs to focus on other things. And I wish we were spending the $14 million on, for example, making the Gardner be completed faster. But that's just me.
No, it's not just her. A solution in search of a problem is kind of a nice way of saying a race-based agenda looking for an issue to hook their divisiveness to. I got in a fight with Toronto Councillor Shelley Carroll this morning over this, a fight that never should have happened. It's a fight in this city that never should have happened. Damn Councillor Chris Moyes and Shelley Carroll and everybody at City Hall for foisting this thing on the city. I know you're aware of the story and the misuse of precious taxpayer funds and the misapplication of history and all of that. But here's how I got in a fight with Carol and where it went. She was a panelist on the morning show, and she said,
we asked staff to put together a group of Black community leaders and asked them to do the naming work. That means you're giving power to the people who are the descendants of slavery and the people who felt the pain. And they very wisely said, you know, we could argue over a name forever. So what it is a sentiment. And they brought the decision forward. Where council entered in was saying, we're not going to do the street. We simply can't afford it. But we did figure out a way to do the square. The board is working on possibly having a corporate partnership cover the budget. But we've limited down to this one place to do this gesture. And we made this commitment to the Black community in this city. They are Torontonians, and leaders of that community came up with this name. I will not be changing my vote today.
A group of Black community leaders? Who are they? Who said they speak for all Black people? When did race-based groups become the way to bring a city together? The whole thing was agenda and race-driven from the get-go. Dividing a city, people like Shelley Carroll like to say, is so multicultural, but she doubled down on the race issue.
As a person who is a white person in the Western world, my ancestors benefited from slavery. I'm now benefiting from my white entitlement. I gave away my entitlement and said, Black community, you find a name. And that's a fair thing to do in Toronto.
No, you didn't say Black community. You said, hey, you group of carefully selected Black activists, you come up with a name. How is this fair to divide us into groups? It's not only not fair, it's destructive. But then it got worse. I told Shelley Carroll as she was leaving that I was going to take on her position. And she doubled down by pulling out her phone to show me a photo of her grandchildren, who are the offspring of a mixed-race union. They're cute kids, by the way, who present as Black. So Shelley's using them as a weapon in her fight to make things worse in this city. I think it's fair to say another person who was in the room when this took place said to me she wasn't using them as a weapon, but more as a motivation on her part. Well, you decide. I knew about those children. I've seen the photo before. I never would have brought them into this fight, but she did. I'll say again that no Black person, other than a couple of angry activists, was worried about the name of the street and the square. Now, obviously, I'm not speaking for Black people here, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that the price of rent and groceries might be higher on the list of the average person of any race, gender, background in this city. No Black person in this city is going to be better off because those activists and their enablers like Councillor Carroll came up with a name that, by the way, honors a slave state like Ghana. Sankofa Square. Why are they calling it that, Daddy? Because we're honoring a country that had slavery before the Atlantic slave trade and an economy that depended almost entirely on slavery. They sold their neighbors. But my exchange with the councillor got worse. I told her I was going to take on her position on air, and she not only pulled out the photo of the kids, she vigorously defended her position as if there had been a whole racist policy and public sentiment in Toronto around the name that had to be corrected by brave people like her. She became exercised when I leaned into my position that she was just causing trouble. And then she did something that blew my mind. She said, I hope you're recording this. Now, this is important. That's a statement telling me she was standing by what she said to me off the air. She was fine with me repeating it on the air. That's how aggressively she supported her position. So let me take a moment here before continuing. That from time to time I have off-air conversations with people, and I keep them off the record. It's part of the back and forth between me and politicians, and it's understood as part of the game. It's happened between her and me before. But she aggressively put herself on the record, and she then referenced the petition that was presented to council with 30,000 names asking council not to change the name of the square. As she went out the door, she said, 30,000 names on the petition. That's how many racists there are. Wow. You disagree with Shelley Carroll, and you're a racist. Somehow you're against her grandchildren. Question the history being used here? You're a racist. Question whether this issue needed to be dragged out of the mud in the first place? You are a racist. Councillor Chris Moyes, who may be the person most responsible for this debacle, called the man who brought that petition to City Council a racist. That's what we're dealing with. In a city that notionally is multicultural, a city council has created a race-based fight out of nowhere and calling ugly racist names of the people who disagree with what they're doing. I didn't sign that petition, by the way, but I agree with the sentiment behind it. So to Shelley Carroll and Chris Moyes, I guess, I'm a racist. If you are part of the vast majority of people, polling shows us, who do not want the change, as far as Chris Moyes and Shelley Carroll are concerned, you're a racist. Well, shame on them. In fact, I'm going to lean into this. Damn them, from the legitimate definition of that term. Damn them for what they are doing. A race fight is the very last thing this city needs. Yet the majority of weak-spined councillors may very well go along with it when they finally get around to voting on it, supposedly today. What are we doing? What are we doing? And as caller Leslie, calling from Niagara, black lady, talking to me and John just a few minutes before my show started here, said, what's the end game? And I thought, what a great way to put it. What is the end game? What is the purpose of this? I would welcome a call from you if you're black. And every time you drove along Dundas, you felt less than. You felt othered. You felt like your life can never be all that it should be until they changed the name of Dundas. That when Chris Moyes came out with this thing and you first heard that they were going to change the name of Young Dundas Square, you said, thank you, Jesus, finally. I can be all that I can be as a black person here in Toronto. Was that really your life? Oh, my God. Shelley Carroll may never talk to me again. And we've had friendly exchanges, and overall, she presents as a nice lady. But 30,000 people signed the petition. That's how many racists there are. It blew my mind. The person in the room with me, too, couldn't believe it. I wasn't aware that she had said it to John. John outed that, too, just moments before I came on. So that is a strong position that she holds. What do you think? 416-872-1010. 872-1010, toll free, 877-518-5151, 518-5151, text me at 7 1010 on the iHeartRadio Talk Network. Thanks for being along while I leaned in pretty hard on my opinion here on what's going on with the changing of the name Young Dundas Square to Sankofa Square. It is a whole race fight that's going on now in this city that never should have happened. And before I take some calls here, Leslie called in on Moore in the Morning when John and I were talking just before the end of the morning show. And here's what Leslie said.
And no disrespect, Miss Carroll, but you're white, privileged saviors. And you're not saving us from anything. This dialogue you have going in Toronto is hurting black kids who are told they're racialized, they're marginalized. It's hurting white kids who are told you're the punk scum culture and race of the world. What's the end game on this?
Okay, in case you didn't pick up on it, Leslie is black, and that was her opinion. Here is Patrick from Toronto.
Yes, Jerry. When are we finally black people going to have a say in this Toronto? You got every nation have everything. You have Italian, you have Greektown, you have Chinatown. All we want is one thing that our young kids, that lady said, could look up to and say, yes, you know what? I'm represented here. This is Sankofa here. I belong here. I can have celebration here.
So let me ask you a question, Patrick. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. When you go to Sankofa Square and celebrate, are you celebrating the slave trade of Ghana?
No, I'm not celebrating that. I'm celebrating that, yes, black people are here too.
Well, nobody said you weren't. Patrick, nobody said you weren't. Let me ask you, be honest with me, Patrick. I want you to be honest with me.
Okay.
Okay. Was this an issue for you last year?
I didn't know about it last year.
Exactly.
But if it did came up, I would have been in the same position.
Okay, but I'm saying we don't need to be, you and I shouldn't be in a fight about this, Patrick. It didn't have to happen. There was no way, Patrick, you were wandering around Toronto going, I'm kept down as a black person because it's called Young Dundas Square.
Yeah, that's true too. But if they came up with it maybe in a different way and said, okay, these are the black names that it has to be a black name. These are the black names we're coming up with. Let's see how Toronto feel about it.
Okay.
Then that would be a different process.
Okay, the black people that Shelley Carroll put together as a group who made this decision, do they represent you? Do you have any idea who they are?
I don't know. They didn't tell us.
No.
But if they did, if they asked me to come on the panel, I would have as a black person. And I've been here generations too, just like that lady in Niagara.
Okay, see, you think it's people like me who don't care about you as a black person. I got news for you. City Hall doesn't care about you, Patrick. They've got their activists that they deal with, just like they have their own little circle of developers, and those are the only people they care about. They don't care about me. They don't care about you, Patrick. You and I should be walking down the street hand in hand singing Kumbaya.
Yeah, well, they never did care about me as a black person, period.
Well, they don't care about me either, and I'm a white person.
Yes, they do care about you.
No, they don't.
You're British, right? You're English? When I was applying for a job at the TTC, you know what the English guy said to me? You'll never get this job before my son did, even though I was teaching his son how to be a machinist.
Well, okay, that's because you're not on the list of the people they care about. They don't care about me either. That's what you need to get through your head. And they've created this a bunch of activists, egged on and facilitated by councillors who now want to call us all racists, started all of this. And here we are fighting, having a fight we shouldn't have had. Patrick and I would have met last year. We probably would have had all kinds of things we could agree on. Like what the hell's wrong with the Blue Jays? Here is Tony.
Hi.
Okay,
I'm totally outraged at that term white privilege, okay? Like white privilege who? For me, my family came here, we came on the boat like the Titanic, okay? We were on the bottom level. Tell her to go down to Villa Colombo and see how many of our countrymen died on the job. There's just under 3,000. Is that white privilege? We had 16 people living in a house, sharing food, water, and accommodations because there was no government support. What white privilege? None of us are racist. We busted our butt, my whole community. Okay?
Thanks very much, Tony, for your call. Now, a couple of things here on the text board, because you can always weigh in that way. This is a good one. Why does it have to be a black name? Why not a native name? Did you ask Aboriginals what they thought? Maybe they would have liked to have put a name on it. Well, at least they got to put a name on the city. we got that going for us. And somebody else wrote in, you're blaming Shelley for a race war and not looking in the mirror on your own role. I have no role in starting this fight. No role whatsoever in starting this fight. Wake up. Here is Veronica from Pickering.
Hi.
Hi.
So, yes, I would have to agree with the previous caller who said that, to what end? I don't live in Toronto now, but I grew up there, and I can't say with any good conscience that money would be well spent. There are too many individuals struggling for rent, for affordable housing, for finding jobs, and we can do better with that money.
Well, I think we could do better if we just got rid of the entire council and just picked 12 people who happen to be wandering past the city hall.
True.
Thanks very much for your call. That's a takeoff of something that William F. Buckley said when he was at Harvard or at Yale, I guess it was. He wrote a book called God and Man at Yale. He said, I'd just as soon be ruled by the first 12 people in the Boston phone book as opposed to the people who are running this university. Here is John downtown.
Morning, Jerry.
Morning.
I'm listening to this stuff, and I want to address to what end first. There is no end, and there hasn't been an end for a long time, and there will continue to be these things that will pop up in society, and these councillors taking flight with political stances. And Ms. Carroll could care less if the name stayed or went. This is just a political move for her. And you know what? I listened to Mr. Patrick speak there, and we have to stop having things shoved down our throats. And, and this is what's happening with this kind of stance with changing the name. That doesn't affect anybody, the name of that square. It never has until this started. And here's the sad thing about it, as far as I'm concerned. It's people like Miss Carroll and other people that are taking her side on this that are taking us back to the 30s. They're the very cause of starting race wars and everything else. And that's my position with it. It's nonsense.
And I would say to Chris Moyes and Shelley Carroll in particular, because they've both used this argument, when we're having an important debate and somebody disagrees with you and you deflect to just calling them racist, you've lost the debate.
100%, and I agree with that. And I don't think that is a proper position for a councillor to be taking. She should be ashamed of herself. And all she's doing is regurgitating nonsense that she's hearing from the far left for her own political gain. And that's what's happening here. And again, I want to say it, I want to be clear about this. We're having things shoved down our throat here in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay? Enough is enough.
All right. I appreciate it. Now, here's a text message. This person writes, I'm black. There is no one black community. There are smaller communities, almost based on where in Africa they came from. I don't think every black person in Toronto came from Africa either, by the way, or that their heritage is automatically from Africa. But the text continues, this Sankofa thing is ridiculous. Could City Hall please focus on gun violence and poverty that is killing many black people? Well, okay, thanks for that, because that ties into what I was saying. I think if you ask the average person, never mind what color they are, the race, gender, heritage, whatever categories you want to come up with to divide us into groups, if you just ask people on the street in Toronto, what are you worried about here? I can't afford my mortgage. I can't afford to buy a house and have a mortgage. I go to the grocery store and I have to leave my left arm there before they'll give me a couple of pieces of salmon and a salad to take home. That's what I'm worried about. Well, you're a racist then, because you're not going along with it. This is unbelievable to me. This is one of the most shameful things I have seen from City Hall in the 15 years that I've been doing this here. People who run around saying, oh, Toronto's so fantastic because we're multicultural and we all get along with one another. You know what? We're all trying to get along with one another. It's just that we've got ignorant people on city council. So sometime today, probably, they're going to vote. And we'll see. If enough people change their vote, but I'd be shocked if that's what happens, then maybe we'll be done with this. But if they do not, here's one of the things that's going to happen tomorrow. And that will be a profiling of the councillors who want to continue a race fight in the city of Toronto and those who do not. This is the iHeartRadio Talk Network.